I loved Fu Yanchen for 10 years. On our 5th wedding anniversary, I came home with a gift, only to find the password to our apartment had been changed. He wouldn't answer his phone. I called his best friend, but he asked who I was. I asked everyone I knew, and they all told me they didn't know anyone named Fu Yanchen. The Civil Affairs Office told me there was no record of our marriage, that I had always been single. Had I been living in a fantasy for the past 10 years? Then where did the Fu Yanchen I loved for a decade go? On the day of our 5th wedding anniversary, I slipped out of work early. I made a special trip to his favorite dessert shop to order a limited edition strawberry cake and bought a bottle of the whiskey he often drank. By the time I got home, the sky had just turned dark. I stood before the apartment door and entered the familiar password, 0918, our anniversary. Beep, incorrect password. I froze, thinking I'd made a mistake, and entered it again. Beep, incorrect password. On the 3rd try, the screen flashed red. Panic began to set in. I pulled out my phone and dialed his number. No answer. I tried again, still no answer. My fingers trembled as I started sending him messages on WeChat, making voice calls, even sending group messages. Not a single one was marked sent. His profile picture was grayed out, as if the account had been deleted. Realizing something was wrong, I found the number of the friend he contacted most often, his college roommate Lin Yu, and called. He picked up after 2 rings. Hello, Lin Yu, it's King Yin. Can you help me get in touch with Fu Yanchen? I can't reach his phone and the password at home has been changed. I can't get in. There were a few seconds of silence on the other end. Who did you say? I was taken aback. Fu Yanchen, your college roommate, my husband. You must have the wrong person. I didn't know anyone by that name in college, he said bluntly. Lin Yu, are you drunk? We had dinner together before. You even gave us a wedding gift. Who the hell are you? Are you a scammer? He snapped, getting angry. Don't call me again. Beep, beep, beep. I stood frozen, my heart sinking bit by bit. I tried to contact his colleagues. The receptionist at his company said, Fu Yanchen, we don't have anyone by that name here. I messaged a college classmate, do you remember Fu Yanchen? She replied quickly, who's that? I asked them one by one, everyone who knew us, and they all replied, are you sure you have the right person? Like a madwoman, I rushed to the counter at the Civil Affairs Office. I need to check a marriage registration. My husband's name is Fu Yanchen. We registered 5 years ago. The staff member took my ID, entered it into the system, and then looked up at me. Ms. Gu, our system shows that you are single. You have never registered a marriage. You've made a mistake. I couldn't believe it, my voice trembling. I have a wedding ring. We've lived together for 5 years. I'm his wife. She checked again, her tone gentle but firm. I'm sorry, miss, but there really is no such record. A buzzing filled my head, and the world went silent. If it weren't for the bottle of his favorite whiskey still in my bag, I would have truly believed it. Was I dreaming? But a dream doesn't last for 10 years. So where in the world did the Fu Yanchen I loved for a decade go? I didn't sleep all night, sitting on the edge of a motel bed, staring blankly at the bottle of whiskey in my arms. Fu Yanchen's WeChat account now read, user does not exist. I opened his Moments feed. It was completely empty, not even a profile picture. All that remained was a system prompt. This user has deleted their account. Our text message history was still on my phone. Line by line, sentence by sentence, from goodnight, wifey, 3 years ago to I'm craving hot pot tomorrow last month. I refused to believe it. I frantically packed my suitcase and rushed back to my hometown overnight. Back to the old apartment we had lived in together 3 years ago. It was the apartment we rented for the first 2 years of our marriage. I had kept it, and the keys were the same. The place was dusty, but everything was still there. Sneezing, I rummaged through the clutter and finally found an old cardboard box in the back of a closet. Inside were our wedding photos, a copy of our household registration, and a letter he had written to me the year he proposed. I flipped through it page by page, reading the words on the letter. King Yin, thank you for making me believe in love. I will be with you until we're old and gray. I clutched the photograph tightly in my hand. He had personally had it printed. Underneath, it was the receipt for our custom-made wedding rings. At that moment, I was certain I wasn't crazy. So where on earth was Fu Yanchen? I packed everything into my bag, planning to go to the police station to file a report the next morning. But just as I stepped out, before the sun was up, my phone rang. It was an old neighbor. King Yin, are you home? It looks like there's a fire at your place. My mind exploded. Without even changing my shoes, I ran back like a madwoman. The thick smoke almost made me collapse. A crowd had already gathered at the door. The fire truck had just finished putting out the flames, and the scene was a complete mess. The landlord, his eyes red, said to me, "I'm so sorry, Kingyun. It was caused by aging wiring. We'll definitely compensate you." I rushed into the living room, searching for the cardboard box, the envelope, the receipt for the rings. They were all gone, burned to ashes. I sat in the ruins for a long time, not even feeling the burn on my arm. Someone handed me gauze, but I didn't take it. I looked up at the scorched ceiling and murmured to myself. Someone wanted to burn even my only piece of evidence. I realized this wasn't a disappearance. It was a premeditated erasure. He hadn't just vanished. Someone was wiping away every trace that I had ever been his wife from this world. From his social media, to our marriage record, to our friends' memories, and finally, to that single receipt and that one photograph. It was as if I were a folder that had been completely emptied. I went on Weibo, Zhihu, Taiba, and all sorts of forums, posting, "Has anyone heard of a man named Fu Yanchen? I can't find him." I put up missing person posters everywhere, but no one replied. Everyone just treated me like an unstable, neurotic woman. Until late at night, I finally received a private message. The person wrote, "The Fu Yanchen you're talking about, I think I've seen him somewhere. Can you send a photo?" My eyes lit up. I fumbled through my photo album, only to discover all our photos together were gone too. Not a single one was left. I couldn't even remember what his face looked like anymore. All that remained was that string of numbers, and the voice that had always called me wifey. I listened to the recordings on my phone all night, but all I heard was echo and silence. I stayed up all night, staring at that private message, reading it over and over. "The Fu Yanchen you're talking about, I think I've seen him somewhere. Can you send a photo?" But my phone's photo album was empty. I searched every folder, unable to find even a picture of his back. Refusing to believe it, I immediately took my phone to a professional data recovery shop. After 2 hours, the technician looked at me with a frown. "Miss, are you sure these photos actually existed?" "I'm sure," I said through gritted teeth. "We lived together for 5 years. How could I not have any photos of him?" He was silent for a moment, then lowered his voice. "I've recovered some data, but it looks like it was manually deleted." I shot my head up. "What do you mean manually?" "It's like a program was installed that, without your knowledge, wiped all image data related to a specific face from your devices. The blurred parts of the face were deliberately processed by an algorithm. It's very professional." A chill ran down my spine. I spent 3 whole days investigating every detail of our life together. I went to his hometown, to the convenience store he said his sister ran. A neighbor looked at me, confused. "The Jiang family has always run this store. Who's this Fu family you're talking about?" I went to the company where he worked. The security guard stopped me outside. "This area is not open to the public. Please register." I gave him the name. "Fu Yanchen, manager of Department 3, please check." The guard shook his head. "We don't have anyone by that name in our company." I went to the police station, wanting to look up his ID card and household registration files. The officer asked, "What is your relationship to him?" "I'm his wife." The officer checked the computer and said, "Sorry, we can't find anyone named Fu Yanchen. The name doesn't appear in the ID, household, or passport systems." I stood at the entrance of the police station, feeling completely drained of strength. This man who had been with me for 10 years had no real foothold in the world. Not in law, not in reality, not on social media, not in photographs, not in life, not in any social network. I started frantically replaying every word we had ever said, trying to remember every call he had taken, every package he had sent. Finally, I remembered a time he had rushed off on a business trip and left his luggage behind. As I was packing for him, I found a strange shipping label in the inner pocket of his suitcase. The sender's name was Lu Yu. The address was our home, and the recipient was him. At the time, I asked him, "Who's Lu Yu?" He said, "It's just a random name I made up for receiving packages. Don't worry about it." Who was he, really? I spent the entire night entering the name Lu Yu into various databases, recruitment platforms, social networks, and corporate shareholding inquiry systems. Soon, a startup tech company registered in Jiangcheng popped up. Legal representative, Lu Yu, with an 80% stake. The registered address was in a suburban villa district, a row of detached houses. I went there first thing the next morning. The doorbell rang twice, and the door opened. A woman in loungewear opened the door. Her hair was messy, and she was holding a child, looking like she had just woken up. She glanced at me and frowned. "Who are you looking for? Is Lu Yu here?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she slowly put the child down and said, "And who are you to him?" I answered instinctively, "I'm his wife." She laughed as if she'd heard a joke. "You're his what?" "I'm Gu Qingyan. I've been his wife for 5 years." She leaned against the doorframe, looking down at me. "Are you mistaken?" My voice trembled slightly. "Did he tell you his name was Lu Yu? That wasn't his name before. He used to be called Fu Yanshan." She stared at me without speaking, then turned and pulled a red booklet from the shoe cabinet. She tossed it into my hands. "See for yourself. Marriage certificate. Groom, Lu Yu. Bride, Jiang Ryuking." The registration date was 3 years ago. The photo of him was unmistakably Fu Yanshan. My vision went black, and I nearly lost my balance. But she just stood there with her arms crossed, a smirk on her face. "You say you're his wife? Then what does that make you? His secret lover?" "You're lying," I said, my lips pale. "We got married 5 years ago. He just used a different name. You came later. You stole my place." She was perfectly calm, pulling out her phone and showing me photos one by one. Pregnancy checkup reports, the baby's 1-month photos, prenatal records, hospital discharge papers. She pointed to the child's birth certificate. "Our child is 4.5. If you two got married 5 years ago, which year did he cheat on you?" I couldn't say a word. "You're pathetic," she said, looking down to stroke the child's head, her voice gentle. "To be used as a stand-in like this, and in the end, you don't even have a legal claim to anything." "A stand-in." She gave a light laugh. "He was at the hospital with me every day back then. Who did you think he was sleeping with at night? Why do you think he never posted on social media or introduced you to his parents? From start to finish, you were just a temporary diversion." I gripped the marriage certificate, my whole body shaking. I gritted my teeth and backed away, step by step. Jiang Ryuking's cold voice followed me. "Don't come back. He said he doesn't want you in our lives anymore. He said you're not a normal person." I stood outside the villa for a long time, clutching my phone tightly. Fu Yanshan, Lu Yu, he hadn't disappeared. He had just started a new life. I waited outside that villa for a full 4 hours. It wasn't until 10 at night that a familiar black car slowly drove in, steady as always. The baby on board, sticker still on the rear window. I stood in front of the car, forcing him to brake hard. The driver's side door opened. The man got out, and when he saw me, he only frowned slightly, as if seeing an unwelcome guest. "How did you find this place?" His tone was so cold, it was hard to believe he was the same person who had shared a bed with me for 5 years. "Don't you have some explaining to do?" I stared at him, my voice trembling. "Why does the whole world say you don't exist? Why can't I find our marriage record? Did you use a fake name? Who are you?" He stood there, gathering his thoughts. "Qingyan, listen to me. I don't want to hear your explanations." I cut him off, my eyes red. "I'll only ask you one question. Were we ever married?" He looked at me, his gaze calm. "No." I couldn't believe it. "We registered. At the Dingcheng Civil Affairs Office, 5 years ago today, we signed the papers and gave our fingerprints together." He scoffed and walked slowly toward me. "You're misremembering. You had a fever that day, and I took you to the hospital. You played out a wedding scene in your own dream." I felt like I was listening to a fairy tale. "Are you insane?" "I'm not insane," he said, his tone growing steadier. "You're too obsessed, Qingyan. We were never together. You were a friend of a friend. You weren't in a good state back then, so out of pity, I let you stay with me for a while. Then you got too attached and started telling people you were my wife. I didn't want to make a scene, so I let you." My hands were shaking with rage. I roared. "So our daily life for 5 years, eating together, watching movies, traveling, that was all something I made up." He said flatly, "You have a vivid imagination. Then what about the voice messages on my phone where you said, 'I love you'? The letter you wrote me? The necklace you made for me with your own hands?" He looked down at me, his voice icy. "I've said many things and given many gifts, and not just to you." I finally understood. I wasn't crazy. I had just been thoroughly deceived. "So you were using me as a stand-in from the very beginning." I could barely speak. "She wasn't well back then, physically or mentally. You were just like her when she first lost her memory." He looked up at me, terrifyingly calm. "You were quiet, obedient, and dependent on me, with no demands. For me, that relationship was just right." I stood frozen, my mind in chaos. "So what happened when she got better? You just threw me away." "Not discarded," he corrected me slowly. "Returned. You were never mine to begin with." My nails dug deep into my palms. Fu Yanchen, no Lu Yu. He hadn't disappeared. His transition period was over, and he had returned to his real life. And I was the interlude he never intended to take responsibility for. Don't worry, he said coolly before he left. I'll make sure you have a better life as long as you don't cause trouble. I watched him walk back into that warmly lit villa. Jiang Ryuking came out from the doorway, smiling as she took the briefcase from his hand. A child's voice called from upstairs, "Daddy." And I stood outside, the cold wind whipping against me. When I got back to my rental, I smashed everything on the table to pieces. I cried my heart out, barely able to breathe. The next morning, I opened my eyes, the tears already dry. I took a cold shower, put on clean clothes, bandaged my wrist, and opened my computer. I was going to reclaim the 5 years I had lost and settle the score. I locked myself in the rental for 3 days, writing down every single timeline I could remember on sheets of white paper. First, I had to figure out how I had been deceived. Step 1, isolation. 3 years ago, I lost my phone, and he took me to get a replacement. After that, I changed my WeChat account, my phone number, and cleared my entire Moments feed. At the time, I was so moved I cried, thinking how thoughtful he was. Step 2, resignation. He said, "I'll support you. You don't have to work so hard." Like I was possessed, I quit my job, left my old company, and lost my independent income. Step 3, relocation. Parking is inconvenient here, and it's too noisy. Let's move somewhere quieter. We moved from the city center to a villa in the suburbs. I lost my familiar neighbors, my commute, and the little coffee shop I went to every day at noon. Step 4, social detachment. I used to have a few close girlfriends, and we'd often get together for colleagues' weddings. Later, he would always say, "Your friends don't seem very reliable. Don't get too close." I gradually cut back on gatherings. Once, when a girlfriend came to see me, he said with a cold face, "Tell her not to come again." And I really did stop contacting her. Step 5, mental manipulation. He said, "Haven't your parents always favored your brother? People like them aren't worth your concern." And like a fool, I believed him. Each step was like cutting off my own flesh. He never yelled at me, never hit me, never forced me, but I willingly severed my own connections to the world. He wasn't violent, but with his gentleness, he had hollowed me out, cleanly and completely. I became a puppet that revolved around him. No voice, no social life, no career, no proof, not even a social media account to post on. And all of this was to set the stage for one final act, erasing me. Once he grew tired of me, once Jiang Ryuking was recovered and back in her place, he could shut down this transitional phase and completely wipe me from the system. He hadn't disappeared. He had just switched worlds, leaving me behind without a word. I dialed a number I hadn't contacted in 3 years. It was my old college classmate and former work partner, Shen Yi. The call connected quickly. "Hello, it's me, Gu Qingyan." "You're alive," he stammered. "Where have you been all these years? It's like you just vanished from the face of the earth." I smiled, but tears streamed down my face. "I'm back." Shen Yi took me out for a meal, his jaw dropping as he listened to my story. "So you're saying he used you as a stand-in from the very beginning, and then deleted that entire part of your life?" I nodded. "I don't even have a work email now. My ID card was almost unusable. I feel like someone who's died and come back to life." He was silent for a moment. "What are you going to do?" I stared at the lemon slice in my glass. "I'm going to get back everything I lost, piece by piece, starting with my identity." The next day, I went to the Household Registration Center to get a new ID card. Then, I went to my former company to get reissued proof of employment and academic credentials. Then I applied for a new bank card, re-registered my social media accounts, restored my contact list, applied for a credit card to rebuild my credit, and contacted the court to retrieve records of all transfers, assets, and property changes under Fu Yanchen / Lu Yu's name that involved me. I was once his invisible wife. Now, I would be his public creditor. I was not a person who had disappeared. He was just too guilty to admit I existed. And I would make him remember who I am. The first thing I did was go to the bank to retrieve my account statements for the past 5 years. When the staff member brought out the documents, she asked casually, "Which card are you looking for? You closed a primary card 2 years ago." I froze. "When did I close it?" "The system shows you came in person to close the account and provided a fingerprint. We also have video archives." I had him pull up the surveillance footage. In the video, I was sitting at the counter wearing a mask, head down, signing papers, very quiet. but I could tell at a glance that it wasn't me. I never wore those wide-brimmed sunglasses, nor had I ever owned those platform sneakers. So he hadn't just erased the traces of my existence, he had also used my identity to liquidate my assets. I remembered that card was linked to a regular investment account for a property in his name. That property was his wedding gift to me. We had chosen the orientation together, painted the walls together. He had me take out the loan, saying it looked better in my name. But now, when I had a lawyer check the records, I discovered the ownership had been transferred to him a year ago. On the notarized documents, my signature was neat and clear, and the date was correct. Except I had never signed that paper. I didn't remember it. No, that's not right. I had never even seen that paper. At the time I trusted him most, he had signed the statement relinquishing my property rights on my behalf. No coercion, no violence, not a single argument. All it took was a pen and a measure of trust. I took all the documents I could find to my lawyer friend, Wei Kaio. As she listened, her frown deepened. This is more than just emotional deception. If you can find the key evidence, you'll have no problem filing a case and holding him accountable. This includes marrying under a false name, tampering with assets, and using your identity for financial transactions, which constitute malicious concealment, identity fraud, and malicious appropriation. My gaze was firm. I want to sue him. She stared at me. You know he's not an ordinary person. His company is doing well now, and he has several assets worth tens of millions. If you go up against him alone, the pressure from public opinion and the burden of proof will be immense. Are you sure you want to go head-to-head? If I don't make him pay, I'll be living in his script for the rest of my life. Wei Kaio said no more, simply pushing up her glasses. Then listen to me, I'll help you with the lawsuit. That night, I registered a new Weibo account, changing the name to the real Ms. Gu. After verifying my identity, I posted only one thing. I was married for 5 years, and then my husband suddenly disappeared. Everyone says he never existed, but the house, the bank card, the voice messages, and the child I miscarried are all real. The post had no pictures, no hashtags. It was as clean as a pebble tossed into a lake. The next morning, I woke up to find the comments had exploded. What kind of story is this? Is it real? This is insane. I actually think it's true. Please keep updating. I want to see what happens next. I'm willing to help with legal aid. Fu Yanchen, or rather Lu Yu. Weren't you most afraid of people finding out about our relationship? Then I let the whole world know. I thought it would take days to get a response, but less than 48 hours after I posted, someone contacted me. It was the most popular local media outlet in Jiangcheng. The reporter's voice was trembling when she called. Would you be willing to do an interview? We can blur your face and keep you anonymous, as long as you're willing to tell your story. I said, no anonymity. She was stunned. Are you sure? I nodded. Use my real name. I'm Gu Qingyan, 30 years old. 5 years ago, I married Fu Yanchen, also known as Lu Yu, and we are not yet divorced. I am now suing him for bigamy, fraud, and misappropriation of property. I spoke every word clearly, my enunciation firm. The interview aired the following afternoon. It started as a 10-minute segment on a local channel, but it quickly went viral. Real name accusation. My husband changed his name to hide our marriage and erased me from the world. 5-year marriage denied. She says the whole world told me he didn't exist. Tech executive Lu Yu sued for bigamy by first wife in real name lawsuit. The number of shares skyrocketed. At 7 that evening, I posted a scanned copy of the official lawsuit on my account. Under the list of charges, stamped with the bright red seal of the law firm, I accused him of using a false identity to register a legal marriage and then marrying another person, constituting bigamy, transferring property without the authorization of his original spouse, constituting misappropriation, repeatedly concealing his true marital status, and claiming to be single to deceive others. The comment section blew up. She's not the other woman, she's the first wife. Is this man insane? Sent this to my law school friends. They confirmed the legal grounds are solid. He can't escape the bigamy charge. The media found Lu Yu, but he initially refused to comment. The next morning, I received a text from him. Are you crazy? Do you have any idea what you're doing? You'll destroy everything I have. He was finally panicking, but I didn't reply. I sent a screenshot to my lawyer and continued with the legal process. 3 days later, the court officially accepted the case. Dressed in black, my hair tied back, I appeared at the entrance of the Jiangcheng People's Court. As I stood on the steps, I saw Lu Yu in the distance, with Jiang Ryuqing by his side. Her face was pale, and she held their child silent. I stood my ground as reporters swarmed me, camera flashes blinding. A microphone was thrust in my face. "Ms. Gu, is there anything else you'd like to say?" I took the microphone and, looking straight into the cameras, said word by word, "My name is Gu Qingyan, and I am his first legally registered wife. Starting today, I will no longer be silent." The scene fell quiet, then erupted with the sound of camera shutters. 10 minutes before the trial began, I saw Lu Yu pacing back and forth in the waiting room. His lawyer approached him. "She has signed transfer slips, video evidence, original ID documents, and former property registration records in her name. You need to prepare a statement." His face was grim as he tugged at his tie. "Is she really going to blow this thing up until it's completely out of control?" The courtroom doors slowly opened. I stepped inside. In this lawsuit, I would not yield a single inch. 3 days after the trial ended, Lu Yu's company was anonymously reported for financial fraud. An emergency shareholders meeting was convened, and he was promptly removed from his position as CEO. The Financial News reported calmly, Jiangcheng's Lu Tech embroiled in hidden marriage fraud scandal. Core executive Lu Yu sued for bigamy, misappropriation, and deceiving investors. Project financing has been suspended. The top trending topic refreshed again. He's not a single CEO, he's someone else's husband. I spent the whole day reading comments on my phone, finally liking one under a screenshot. It was something he had said in a public interview 3 years ago. "I want my life to be clean, focused, and orderly, with every step taken decisively." After liking it, I forwarded the trending topic and wrote a single sentence. "Don't worry, I've tidied things up for you." Jiang Ryuking broke down faster than I expected. The day she called me, her voice was so shrill she barely sounded human. "What the hell do you want? Do you know that by pushing him like this, you're destroying our whole family?" I laughed coldly. "Wasn't your home built on someone else's grave?" She screamed, "He loves me. You were just a stand-in." I cut her off. "You're wrong. The person he loves most is himself. I was the stand-in, you're the tool. And as for that child, you'd better get a paternity test to see if he even left any of his bloodline behind." The other end of the line went silent. What he feared most wasn't prison or bankruptcy. It was being seen as dirty. He wanted to live as the cleanest, most respectable, most composed, high-quality man. I wouldn't let him have his wish. The court sent a notice. Lu Yu was suspected of providing false personal background information in multiple projects, leading to misleading financing. 3 investment firms had already applied to freeze his personal and corporate assets for compensation. The frozen amount was as high as 13.7 million. His villa had been seized by the bank, shareholders were forcing him out, and his team had collectively resigned. That day, sitting in my rental, I opened the old laptop he had once given me and started a new document. The file name was just 4 words. Death certificate. I listed every single thing I had lost in those 5 years. Time, money, career, relationships, health, my child, my reproductive rights, my social records, and my mental trauma. I prepared it as evidence for the next round of civil compensation claims. After reading the document, my lawyer was silent for a long time. "You've organized this with terrifying clarity." I smiled and took a sip of water. I was a housewife for 5 years. I did his laundry, managed his finances, arranged his business trips, picked him up, soothed his clients, and replied to his assistants. Didn't he always like things clean, decisive, and well-organized? Now, I'm that kind of person too. Except I'm just getting his affairs in order for his final journey. Lu Yu finally sent me one last message before his court appearance. "Gu Qingyan, you win. Can you let me go now?" I didn't reply. I just deleted the message and said lightly, "You didn't hesitate when you deleted me, did you?" The storm didn't kill anyone in the end, but it did destroy a man. Lu Yu was found guilty of bigamy and sentenced to 2 years in prison, with the sentence suspended. The civil compensation case was filed separately and is still under review. He lost his status, his credit, his capital, his persona, and his future in Jiangcheng. I didn't go to the final court hearing. When my lawyer asked why, I just replied, "I've already won. I don't need to be present for the rest." I put on a white dress I had bought years ago and went to sign the lease for a new apartment in the city center. The landlord asked me, "Living alone?" I said yes, alone. At that moment, I felt very calm. The feeling of no longer having to carefully please someone was very comfortable. I moved my household registration back to my hometown and switched back to my old phone number. I opened a new bank account, re-established my health insurance, and filed my social security. Bit by bit, I became Gu Qingyan again. Not someone's wife, not someone's shadow. Just Gu Qingyan. Later, I saw a little girl on a street corner pulling her mother's hand, pointing at a sugar painting stall and shouting, "Mommy, look, it's a phoenix." Her mother smiled gently. "Then let's get one painted for you too." I stood there and watched for a long time. I realized that in those 5 years, I hadn't done a single thing that truly belonged to Gu Qingyan. I chose his meals, did his laundry, prepared his medicine, changed his flights, deleted my social media accounts, stopped contacting my friends, and lived for him until I had nothing left. I never once asked myself, what do I want? That day at home, I opened an old hard drive and found a document I had written in college. It was an unfinished manuscript for a novel. The protagonist was named Yanyan, and her personality was a lot like mine. I sat in front of the computer, looking at those words, and my eyes suddenly welled up. In the story, she had always wanted to be a painter. I remembered a line of dialogue I had written. "Even if I'm not the one who is loved, I want to live a life worthy of being painted." At the end of that year, I used my manuscript fees to enroll in an illustration class. The first time I picked up a paintbrush, my hand was shaking, but from the second stroke on, it was steady. I painted many pictures, with no theme, just doodling. One of them was of a room with the curtains drawn open, letting in the sunlight. When I finished, my teacher stood beside me and said, "This one has a feeling of redemption." I tried again, but still no answer. But I knew he was right. Much later, I received a call. It was from Jiang Ryuking. Her first words were, "I'm sorry." I didn't say anything. She hesitated for a long time before saying, "I got a divorce. The child isn't his." I listened quietly and then said, "Then you're free now." She asked me, "Do you hate me?" I said, "No. There's no need to anymore." As spring approached, while I was moving, I found that yellowed wedding dress in an old wardrobe. We never took wedding photos. I never even had the chance to wear it. I folded it neatly and threw it in the trash. It wasn't out of disrespect. It was just that the wedding had never truly existed. He had never loved me, but I had finally learned to love myself again.